Here today, feels like nighttime, but we're here today with my old friend Bill Stanley. We sat beside each other for many years, and I've been watching this session go on, and I can understand why I'm not here. But it's been an interesting session.
It'd be better to have you. Well, of course, love sitting next to Bryce Reeves, who's also a senator we've known for a long time. But it's been a different year, and I think some things have kind of turned themselves on their head. You know, back during the George Floyd summer, they were all saying defund the police. Now they're saying, the Democrats are saying overfund the police. And but we've seen some interesting things, and I think the session has 3 more days left, and we still haven't seen what may be the best to come. At least interesting to watch, not great perhaps for our law enforcement or for the Commonwealth of Virginia.
Well, knowing you and knowing our relationship as we were in the General Assembly and knowing how tense things get about this time of year, there's always a great time to break away from the tenseness of the session and have fun and make fun of each other so that everybody kind of can get a break from it.
Sure.
Our days sitting in the back row and using the prop of the puppy to talk about
That's right.
then Matt Ferris's bill.
Yeah, that's right. On cutting your yard.
On cutting, yeah.
And well, it was good for puppy dogs.
That's exactly right.
Do their business. And well, you have to have a little levity in there. We've had some last week and the week before. It gets very tense, and it seems, you know, Bill, there is a change. I think when you and I have been here 15 years ago, 10 years ago, it was more cordial. The politics of Washington, D.C. did not bleed across the Potomac River into Richmond. I think now with the younger groups coming in, and now that we're the older group, what you're seeing is the politics of Washington, D.C. come from the legislators from Northern Virginia. And they're not happy right now because the presidency is in Republican hands. Control of the Senate and the House and the Congress in Washington, D.C. is in Republican hands. And so we may be doing work, and then all of a sudden we break off into a dissertation on why the orange man is bad and all this, and then they try to walk back what they've kind of said before, you know, about what I was saying, defund the police. Now they're saying, Glenn Youngkin was saying defund the police, and yet they cut, what, $25 million out of your budget.
Sure.
And, you know, they say they want to help Southside, Southwest Virginia, but they cut out about $50 million in relief funds that the governor had written into the budget. And then they want to push solar on us because they think it's great for them. Ultimately, they want to, when they drive their electric vehicle around the Beltway, they want to close their eyes when they plug their EV in and just hope and pray that all the power that goes in there is not from coal-fired plants, but rather is from, you know, the Magic Genie has only gotten it from the solar panels from Southwest Virginia. So, and then they dictate, as my father used to say, when I want your opinion, I'll give it to you.
Sure.
What we think we should be doing with our farmland and our people, and we just don't reckon that is a way for us to be a commonwealth. But they seem to have attitude. So it's been a different year, different attitude, and I just don't think they like the national outcome of the election.
I think it's true. I mean, you hear it said in many ways there, and you know, listening to today's debate with Rome about the vehicles that farm vehicles that come out with no lights
to take your product or pick your hay up, to move one place to another on your farm roads. To basically, you know, we have a lot of trailers that don't have lights on them, and it's not that they're trying to disobey the law, but this is farm product, and as Mark Obenshane said on the floor, you know, we're not talking a lot of margin. Farming costs a lot of money. The margins are thin, and if you're just transporting product from point A to point B or feed or whatever it is, and you're doing it, you know, safely, then if you don't have lights on the back of your trailer, but you have large reflective things like we do with the Mennonites and the Amish, then that's okay. Then it's not a crime.
Reflective tape. I mean, we do all kinds of things to make
it happens all the time where we come from. There, they envision it tying up the Beltway more than the Beltway's tied up.
Right.
And again, with all due respect to Senator Rome, dictating what we should be doing and where we can do it when it comes to rural area farming. They're just out of their league. They don't know what they're doing or talking about. In the same way that, you know, when they talk about data centers, we go, I don't know. And they don't understand that there's a dividing line between the two of us and respect it.
I just kind of found it hypocritical when they were telling us in 2021, don't enforce this. And now they're coming back and saying, oh, we want to make it to where you've got to stop these people driving these farm trailers, logging trucks. I mean, logging trucks are terrible because the wiring gets hung up in brush when they come out.
Logs are leaning down below the line
Right.
where the brakes are. Yeah, it's funny you say that because we have what's called primary fences and secondary fences, and law enforcement knows all about that.
Right.
And a whole list of what you would be able to pull someone over with for a primary fence, including bad lights.
Right.
Your light off on your license plate, tail lights out, things hanging from your rear view mirror, were then turned into secondary fences in the name of whatever equity or whatever they thought. But we've taken that out, and so we can drive around without our headlights on or our taillights working, and you don't get pulled over that. But someone that's carrying large round bales of hay, going 1.5 miles down the road using his farm trailer or his dump trailer is the one that gets pulled over, gets a ticket. And a $120 ticket's a lot to a farmer, and it's not right. But see, again, they don't comprehend the differences.
Well, having been a trooper in both an urban, suburban, and rural area, I can assure you that, probably, I'm going to say at least 35 to 40% of the DUIs that I got were from an equipment violation that led to further investigation, smelling the alcohol, arresting someone for
the
marijuana. Yeah, now they legalize that, or somewhat legalize it. Decriminalized it, but it just doesn't go into the face of saying we're supporting you, because you're tying your hands of everything that you do as far as enforcement wise, and then they're wanting to criminalize you if you take it a step further.
Right.
And so, I mean, it seems like such a shift. We'll throw a lot of money at you, but we don't want you to do anything. And I think that's what they're seeing on the federal level.
Yeah.
They throw a lot of money at federal programs
with no accountability. And just a philosophy, which was a left-leaning philosophy. And again, I like to kid about this, but I'm not so sure that I'm kidding. I think a lot of the people from Northern Virginia, a lot of the new legislators believe that small farmers don't make the food. Yeah. It's made in the back of the Publix and the Kroger, and that's where they make it. Right. And they don't really understand what our farmers go through. They don't understand how rural is different than suburban or urban, and that in Virginia, it's not a one-size-fits-all kind of deal. And, whether it may be because it's a great talking point politically to maybe diversity or equity, what they're doing is tying the police officers' hands. And in what you were saying about, primary and secondary offenses, we're not applying things equally everywhere. Sometimes I wish maybe we just break them off and put them somewhere else, and maybe we get some sanity back. I like to call it NOVA, Northern Virginia, and ROVA, the rest of Virginia. And that's probably where we have our biggest problems here. We have partisanship. Obviously, right now, they don't like Donald Trump being president. But what we really have is regionalism. And you and I used to talk about that when we were in the Senate. And our problem is we built Virginia, South Side, Southwest, coal, textile, tobacco, manufacturing. And then their rules over time, as the government grew, people started coming to Northern Virginia, and their rules like NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement, CAFTA, sent our jobs overseas. Then they said coal was bad. And they said tobacco's bad and said you can't grow it. Now they legalized marijuana, but tobacco's bad. So they put a lot of farmers out of business, put a lot of coal miners out of a job. And they said, this is now what you're going to accept. And guess what? It hasn't worked out for us. We'd like to have some self-determination. And what we'd really like is to have them stop telling us what to do with our lands and our people. Work with us, not against us. And understand that there are differences. Every single legislator that I brought down from Northern Virginia to see South Side and Southwest goes, it's so clear. You can see all the stars. These trees are huge. The oxygen, the air is like pure. And when you drive on a road at 60 miles an hour, you go 60 miles an hour. And people wave at you. And they go back and think normally that going around the Beltway at 5 miles an hour and smog and seeing 4 stars in the night sky, and because of all that light pollution, that's normalcy. And they come down and see what we have, and it's better. Why, when they go back, do they not get? Leave us alone.
But a Laurel and Hardy wave is a middle finger when you're going around someone.
all
Yeah.
the day up
Yeah.
there. But you know, I mean, down where I'm from, we wave at each other, and if you don't wave back when you see them at the convenience store a week later, they go, "Something wrong?"
Yeah. Did I offend you?
Yeah, right. Are you mad?
Yeah.
But you know, there is now a real difference, I think, regionally,
Right.
between the people of the Commonwealth of Virginia, and a lot of people in Northern Virginia don't seem to care about what we all have to offer equally to the rest of Virginia.
You know, when we were here, I mean, you'd never thought you'd ever say, "Well, I miss Saslaw." But you know, it was one of those things that he understood the other parts of Virginia.
He did.
And even though you probably disagreed on policy issues, he did come around and say,
Absolutely.
"Look, this is part of Virginia."
He knew it. He went and visited it. I'll give you, without naming the senator, we were in school modernization, and we were in a school in like Christiansburg, and showing how old the school was, why we need to modernize. It's taken 6 or 7 years, and now everybody realizes we need to put money to that. And our Northern Virginia Democrat senator says, "Well, so where's the subway?" And I said, "Well, it's probably next to the food line." And she said, "Next to the food line?" And I was like, "Yeah, you hungry?" She was talking about mass transit.
Right.
I'm talking about a sub shop.
The restaurant.
And then, you know, and then we were looking at these schools, and we're in the principal's office, and where they come from, they have an aquatic center, like at every school. Every high school has an Olympic-sized swimming pool.
Mm-hmm.
So the senator says, "So where's your aquatic center?" And we were sitting in the principal's office, and he had a fish tank. And I said, "Right there." She turned around, looked at the aquarium, and said, "No, no, that's not what I meant." I said, "Where do you think we would have the money for an aquatic center?" That's kind of the difference in not understanding the differences between Northern Virginia and Southern Virginia. Now, I love that center to death, and that was years ago, but it hasn't changed. If anything, it's gotten more divided.
Well, and I've noticed that down here. I've seen it on the House side and the Senate side. It's almost like you're dealing with a Washington D.C. type political mentality that has just moved further and further into Virginia, and it's kind of scary. And you know that we've been down here, and you were gracious enough to carry the amendment for us to take the state police out of the collective bargaining.
Yeah.
And you know, it's just one of those things that we just don't agree with. And one of the things that kind of amazed me was talking to the senators that were carrying it, is they were like, "Why do you not want to be a collective bargaining agent?
Yeah.
Why does your association not want to do that?" Well, you know, there's several reasons. You know, I think it kind of deteriorates the agency when it comes to disciplinary actions that they then handle, not the agency.
Right.
And the biggest thing is we have to be so unbiased when we do investigations.
Well, that's just it.
We're the state's agency that has to go in and investigate state agencies.
Think about it this way. When was your association formed?
50 years now.
Okay. So
74.
So the two people that formed up your association, Wayne Huggins and
Right.
Gil Davis.
Right.
Gil Davis was my boss, taught me the practice of law. I was his law partner for many years. Great human being. I mean, amazing Virginian, ran for attorney general. He and Wayne put your association together for that very reason, to be that voice
Right.
for the state police, and also because the state police had to be above everything else. Now that's before unionization in government was really thought of, but I think they're very prescient and could see in the future of how important this organization would be, but also to make sure that it was well established, that there was a firm foundation, so that when unionization did come up, if it ever did, that we weren't going to have that for the state police. Where the short-sightedness is for them, and which really bothered me, and you and I talked about this, they had exempted our sheriff's departments, our constitutional officers, of the police. During the George Floyd riot days, when the Democrats came here, we were in session 158 days in the Science Building because of COVID, and they were passing laws like the secondary primary laws, and also too laws for defunding the police, reimagining law enforcement, these kind of things that were going on. And I put a simple bill in that said, all right, you can't unionize law enforcement. And they were perplexed by that. And the greatest example that I used, and I used it on the floor later, was Derek Chauvin in the George Floyd case was protected by the unions over and over and over again. We're not going into it, you know, whether it was murder or not, that's not the point, but he was on the street and walking a beat because the unions had protected him over and over and over. And union then becomes bigger than fealty to whoever you serve, the people that you serve, the municipality or the state. And so that union kind of takes over, and its protective arms and webs, it allows bad officers to continue to thrive, which is your association. You don't want bad apples.
Mm-hmm.
You want that esprit de corps.
Mm-hmm.
A union provides not only in collective bargaining, but protections that we don't get to the truth if there's malfeasance by a police officer, keeps them on the payroll, and keeps them around, and perhaps to do something very bad in the future. On top of that, you're the agency that investigates other crimes within the government. So if you're union and the government employee that you're investigating is union, same union, well, there's an inherent conflict. So who do you pull out to look at that? One of the sheriffs in one of our counties in Bedford or Martinsville? I mean, how do you do that? So it's a complication that the Virginia State Police doesn't need, and I just don't think they saw it. And so when they had this collective bargaining bill, it's going to go to the governor, and I tried on the floor, and you and I worked together, and your writing was great too, and I used your research as well, and we tried to just common sense say, listen, if you want to unionize teachers, school boards, government employees at the state level, fine. Please leave the state police out of this. We're well represented, and here are the inherent risks if you are then unionized. And what did they do? They ignored them. They said, no, we know better than you. And the bill went out, and my amendment to keep you out of it failed.
Well, I thought it was very, and I explained this to Senator Serville. I thought it was very ingenuine for him to stand up and say they have no representation here. We've been down here for 50 years.
Yeah.
Wayne before me, and we represent our people. And the races that they've seen over the years are because of Wayne's effort and mine while I was in the General Assembly.
Oh, yeah.
And
I mean,
so,
anytime I tried to get a raise for our sheriffs.
Yeah, I was knocking you back and getting one for
I get 3%, you get 5%. I mean,
well,
you
that's
were amazing in that. I mean, I really do credit you. And the state police as well. You're a great representative for them when you were in the Senate and the House. I remember you were in the House. In the
I was,
chamber,
yeah.
But no, and quite frankly, Wayne's leadership, everybody loved Wayne.
Right.
We love John Jones and our sheriff's department leadership that comes up here. But you really made a difference on the floor of the Senate for these guys. And compression, I mean, we can go about issue, chapter, and verse on what you've done. And now, as the leader of the VSP, and I'm not just saying it because you're bigger than me and I know you and I call you a friend, you really have made a difference. Well, that's what, that's something in my mind that's better than collective bargaining. And I think what they do is they think Republicans are against unions. Half my family was union on my dad's side. That's not it, but there's a time and a place.
Sure.
And if you're going to have a union, also have something in a right to work situation so somebody doesn't have to join that. It's not compulsory, but it's a choice. And with y'all, you serve too important a function. You are the world's policeman here in the Commonwealth of Virginia, not just enforcing our laws, whether they be on the highway or in our counties and in the divisions, but also too when it comes to checking up on the government and making sure that the government or people in it are not committing crimes. And so, I think it's a horrible, horrible thing they did. I really disagreed with it. We had a good fight and a good discussion about it on the Senate floor. I'm sorry I lost for you.
Well,
I thought I had a vote out there that wasn't out there.
Yeah, I thought you had one too.
You told me it was out there.
It was told to me that they were going to go that way, but
and they didn't go that way.
They didn't go that way, and we haven't had that conversation yet, but we will.
But here, so thank goodness we have a great governor like Glenn Youngkin.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to veto that bill.
I do.
So we can be rest assured that we're not going to subject ourselves to union. And Scott Serville said, Senator Serville, the leader, majority leader for the Democrats, said, "Oh, there's people in Northern Virginia that want to unionize in the state police, and there may be."
Well, yeah.
But I don't know. I never had them reach out to me. But what I do know is the state police in my region that I've talked to said, "Heck no." Quite frankly, and I think everybody who watches this, whether you're a state police officer or not, your wages, the ones that you have been able to get your state police officers, would be lower if they were unionized and engaged in collective bargaining.
Well, I just saw an article about Fairfax. Fairfax PD went into collective bargaining in 2021. They're 200 people down, and their raise was 3%, 3.1% coming out of this collective bargaining. Think of what we've gotten over the years just by our efforts of coming down here and saying, these are the things that are happening.
Right.
But the problem when you're collective bargaining with public dollars, taxpayers' dollars, is these individuals who are with the state police now are only thinking more money. They're not thinking they're taking it out of one pocket and putting it in another.
Right.
Because you're going to pay higher property tax, higher income tax, all that, because someone's got to pay it at the end of the day.
Right. And on top of that, you're paying union dues.
Well, and that's the one thing I don't think they understand. Largest majority of our members understand it. There's a group that is in Northern Virginia mainly that don't get it. They don't get the fact that in order to have a union, there's dues that are involved. We charge $25 a month to be a member of our association.
Well, that's pretty cheap.
Well, I'm saying there's no
that's
way that
that's
collective bargaining is going to be 1% of your salary.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just the way it's going to be.
It's the vigary. It's what you pay for their negotiating. So now when you get a 3.5, it's really a 2.5.
Yeah.
And it's not going to happen as often either. I mean,
you can't. It's too
over
expensive.
And over the past 6 or 7 years, when you were in the General Assembly, we've been getting raises for the VSP, 2, 3, 5, sometimes big chunks, bonus stuff.
$48 million to address compression.
Yeah,
I mean,
they would never get that in collective bargaining. They wouldn't. But you know what? Whoever's leading the collective bargaining is going to get that 1% off of everybody's check. And that is what I think, when you think about it this way. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. There's a reason why you wouldn't do it. And we talked about the ethics in terms of being an investigation beyond reproach. Well, there's also a real financial impact. Everybody thinks it sounds great in this way, and maybe it works at the rubber plant,
right,
but it doesn't work in government. And you don't have the power of strike anyway in this bill. So
you don't.
So if you didn't agree in collective bargaining, they couldn't walk out of the job. Teachers can't, police couldn't, state police couldn't. So you don't have any leverage over the government. And now you're in protracted negotiations rather than coming to the General Assembly every year and saying, look, for retention, for training, for upgrades, to upgrade our vehicles, to upgrade our buildings, to upgrade our investigatory tools in the toolbox, we need X amount of money. And you guys go and you persuade these members of the General Assembly, makes it into the budget, you fight for it. It's a lot better outcomes, and I can tell you this from experience and factually, not just saying this politically, than you would in a collective bargaining situation.
And I sometimes look at it in the sense as, being a former trooper, believing in the respect and integrity of being a trooper. When we were formed 50 years ago, that was mentioned to us about being a union, and we gave our word that we would not be. And we've held to that word, and I'm not going back on that word. Yeah. And so, it's so obvious when you watch some of these things that are occurring with those groups that want to unionize. They don't understand what that does to their state.
Right.
I mean, it causes mass migration because of increase in taxes, and what it does to their job eventually in the end. Yeah. And I'm really thankful that the governor is there as a stopgap.
For one more year.
But we still got to fight this fight. I don't think it's going to end. And the one final thing for you guys is you take away the trooper's ability to come sit down at Bill Stanley's office and say, we're having some issues here.
Right.
Because then you're going to have to say, well, you got to go talk to your collective bargaining agent.
Yeah.
Because I can't do anything about it.
Your union shop guy.
Yeah, I can't do anything.
Is that your first sergeant, or is it another guy? I mean, does it create a problem in the hierarchy if it's not the first sergeant and the division commander, or what? How do you do that? How do you work that out? And then guess the answer is no, you can't work it out.
Right.
It's going to create more problems than it would ever create benefits, and you're not going to make as much money in increases than you ever would staying the course of where you are with the association and the good work you do here. It's worked. Okay. If I hear one complaint, Carrico, and this is when you're in the Senate, it's like, and it was just like I said earlier, when I'd ask for a 3%, I get a 3%. Next thing I turn around, it's a 5% for the state police.
That's because you advocated for me to be on finance.
Correct, which is a real big mistake, but it worked out great for our area. But, again and again and again, you were able to raise the pay significantly of our troopers, and I hear it from our deputies, our sheriffs, our deputies. And they go,
they love me,
Carrico. But, that routinely state police get paid more than our constitutional officers in our counties and our cities. And that's because this association has done the work, has done the footwork, has really put the time in. You have picked up where Wayne left off. What a legacy Wayne Huggins has.
He has.
He's an incredible man. I mean, I've known him forever and loved being here and watching him work. And now to see you working that way, even though I called you a sellout for leaving the state senate, and was very upset. I think I even cried a little bit.
Well, if I'd have stuck around, one of us may not be here.
Well, so that's true. Turns out
I think I knew who it would have been, but anyway.
Yeah, no, it probably would have been me, and especially the way I am. But so you said to me when you left, you said, and you're taking this job, you said, Bill, I'm leaving this job because I don't want to primary you, and I said, there's no way, Carrico, we're getting put in the same district. Man, I'm way over here in Franklin. And lo and behold, the Supreme Court of Virginia gave me Grayson County. And
which was good for Grayson, but...
And I've asked you for 6 lotto numbers, and you haven't provided me...
Well, I'm still working on those for you. All
right. If you like Houdini or whatever, Kreskin and can guess all this stuff.
Yeah, I think lotto numbers. I might play them and then let you... I'll divide some money with you. How about that?
That's fine. But, it was a real loss for us. It was a loss for the state police when you retired. But yet having you back here as the executive director, is that your title?
Yeah,
executive director.
Executive director, government relations.
Yeah. That's highfalutin.
Yeah, but you know who I am, Bill.
Yeah, that's it. Of course. And you've got these great relationships with everybody here, from the years that you put in the General Assembly and the House and the Senate. So everybody knows you. I know you's Carrico.
Well, I can say to our guys, you've been a great supporter. I mean, even when you were taking the heat from other agencies over the fact that we were trying to get this money to keep retention of our guys and supporting this and supporting that, you would do it.
Yes, sir.
And we appreciate it. And you know what? The sheriffs love me whether they want to admit it or not, because they just want me to come over and help them. And I tell them all the time, if it's good for us, it'll be good for you, because it comes right on the foot.
Yeah, a rising tide floats all ships.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
So no, you've done great for them too. I mean, ancillary by proxy. It's not that you've ever had them in that way. I mean, that's what I would take home. But you've done a lot of great things here, and I think, especially in our region, our districts are getting bigger because the populations dissipate. To have somebody up here who's leading the state police from our region, from Southwest Virginia, really makes a difference. It's a big shot in the arm. It's like having another advocate for our area. We've got Travis Hackworth, and he's pretty amazing. Todd Pillion. I mean, Travis Hackworth is just like replacing you with your stepbrother. I mean,
when our brother Ben died and I left and Travis came, it was just like walking in, like you said on the floor, he was the love child of Ben Chafin and Bill Carrico.
Bill Carrico had a child that is Travis Hackworth, because you combine both things, which is the strength of the region, and that mountainous personality, that big giant personality that you have and that Hackworth have, and then that sweet touch that Ben Chafin had. Ben always just was.
He's a gentle guy, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was. You and I would get up and take on that Dick Saslaw and tick him off, and he'd call me the senator from Dog Patch, and he'd waggle his finger at you, and we get a kick out of it. They have different personalities, but I tell you what, they're so effective. The Todd Pillion and Travis Hackworth. I'm really close to Travis and Todd, and we work really hard on these issues. But in the same way, we miss you as well.
And they've got the golly gee attitude about, come on, work with us, come on, and
I mean, Hackworth's
just a little different.
I mean, Hackworth's, with our new speaker, Don Scott, they're fast friends.
Yeah.
And that's great for our region, too, because he thinks about the rural areas. Todd Pillion has got great relationships and can reach across the aisle at the same time, holding our conservative values, very true to our region. And so, and I hope I kind of fit in there some way. I seem to be the mouthy one.
Well, you
that
got
tries to use comedy to kind of relax everybody. But today, I mean, I don't know if you saw on the floor, one of the senators from Northern Virginia was saying I was out of order. Because I dared said that their little plan for Northern Virginia and for government contractors to get our state tax dollars. But then they knew that it was kind of a political ploy that was just, they were crapping out on it. And I said, how dare you? It's a political show. This is I said, the emperor has new clothes and no clothes. And the senator jumped up and thought I was saying Scott Surville was naked.
Yeah.
I said, no, he looks fully dressed from here.
Well,
That's what we're dealing with right now. Kind of brings together what we're talking about. It's Northern Virginia versus the rest of Virginia. They're very hyper right now and sensitive because Orange Man's changing their dynamic of wasteful spending in Northern Virginia, where these people are living in $1 million mansions and getting that free dole from the government. A little bit of accountability comes in there and they start freaking out, and then when you call them out on it, we have a little bit of that scrap. So having somebody like Travis and Pillion there and our other representatives from below the James River has been at least very good for the Commonwealth in our region.
Well, it's and one final thing, the fact that they want to bring up to me the pardonings of all the January 6th rioters, and I should be appalled by that. And we don't work on a federal level, and so.
And they made a big deal about the state police that did a great job up there.
Took him on. I mean, he brought that up on the floor. We actually took control of that situation. Yeah. And I explained to him, look, I'm not going to comment on that because, the president has the right to pardon whoever he wants.
Right.
And I didn't comment on Biden pardoning his son nor the guy who killed the police officer. He pardoned the guy.
Right.
And so, if we want to go down that road, equally, there's questions about who presidents pardon all the time, but that has nothing to do with the current circumstances we're dealing with in the state of Virginia. Forget about D.C. Let's work on Virginia.
Well, and then accountability with some of the earned credits that they give for early release. We've had people that have earned that under their policies from 2020-21 when they passed this legislation. There have been people that were early released from prison that have killed since. I think the number's 10 have committed murder since then. But you're worried about, somebody who's throwing a trash can around on January 6th. Now, granted, I don't condone violence. The breaking in was stupid, and they should have been charged with crimes, and they weren't. But
the punishment didn't fit the crime.
Sure.
That's the problem.
But when you're fixated on that, and you ignore how your policies have actually resulted in the lives of 10 people being lost, and you don't equate the two or even understand the two, you put something higher because it's of a political nature rather than, hey, maybe we passed something that isn't exactly great for Virginia. But no, we want to focus on this stuff in Washington, D.C. and distract from maybe what our accountability and responsibilities are. That's what you get here in the Commonwealth of Virginia. That's what we've got going on right now. Yeah. And we could use you back. We'll expand to 41 senators. We'll carve out another district.
Right.
Put Grayson in it, and we'll make it happen.
At large.
An at-large district, yes.
Who better?
You fit.
I'm at large.
Perfect. Perfect, Billy.
Well, it's been great to talk to you, Bill. It's
an honor. Now, this is getting you back because, you went on my podcast.
I did. I went on yours.
Leaning Right and Turning Left with Sadler in the center. You can get it on any one of your platforms. It's not only is it a classic having you on there, we tell some great stories about us being in the Senate together. And it's one of the most watched and listened to podcasts I've had. So I know, based on this kind of chemistry, this is going to be one of the most watched video blog podcasts ever.
I'll come back to. I mean, state police are great NASCAR fans and race fans. So it was great being on there to talk to Hermie.
And I want to thank those state police officers for everything they do. I mean, it's a heck of a job, and what bravery encouraged the men and women of Virginia State Police. And it's also great to see them at the racetrack there when NASCAR comes to town. We've got like 6 Super Bowls, now 5 because we lost one in Richmond. But those state police are out there keeping order, and people respect them, and it's just great to see them and catch up with them when we're at the racetrack. Hermie and I've got their race team, and we had you on the podcast. Yeah. Go listen to that podcast. See, I'm
expecting everyone to go to that podcast because it's really fun.
Leaning Right, Turning Left with Sadler and the Senator. You go to the one with Billy Carrico in it. It's a good 2-hour fun fest and talking about Virginia politics and our funny stories and your responsibilities now. So thanks for that.
Well, I'll tell you one little clip about your podcast. I went to get my vehicle fixed at Haley GMC here in Richmond, and the guy who was over the maintenance department there called me, and he was asking me what the problems was, and I told him, and he said, "Your name sounds familiar. Were you on a podcast with Bill Stanley and Herbie Sandler?" I said, "I sure was."
There you go.
And so I got my name right there, got to the front of the line.
To make you famous, buddy.
Yeah.
Yeah, the car got worked on. You got a good deal, didn't you?
Got a great deal.
You're welcome. We'll take that up later.
Okay.
But thanks for what you do.
Thank you.
Thanks to all the state police officers out there that are listening, and all the Virginians as well. Virginia State Police Association is an incredible association. Let's keep it that way. You guys make a big difference here at the Capitol. Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it, man.
Absolutely, brother.